Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and this is Real Crime Uncovered. It was 31st day of December 2022, and just like every other person who made it to that day, the FATINOYE'S family were excited because who wouldn't be? You just made it to the last day of the year 2022. They were preparing for the crossover service. It was a time to go before God's presence and give him thanks while you prepare for the upcoming year 2023. Indeed, they made it for the crossover night. They went, they sang praises like every other person who was in church. They praised God and they did the countdown to 1st of January 2023. What could be better than that feeling? They screamed, Happy New Year. They exchanged pleasantries with their church members, with their family members that were there. They sent out text messages to their loved ones. They called those whom they could call to wish them Happy New Year. They embraced themselves, husband and wife, father and child, mother and child, and all of those to rejoice in the new year. And when all of that was done, they set out for their home. It was time to rest and start the new year on a good note. What the FATINOYE'S had no idea of was that they had enemies within their workforce. After the crossover service, Mr. Kainde and Mrs. Bukola FATINOYE, husband and wife, drove back home in their car together. When they drove into their house, some young men stormed out of nowhere and ambushed them right in their own home. Those young men led them into the house, and one of them demanded for some money to be transferred to a Kuda bank account. And Mr. FATINOYE tried to make the transfer. Unfortunately, it bounced back. It failed. And one of the suspect who insisted on the transfer to Kuda Bank, saying that there was no way they were going to leave without having the money transferred, he decided to provide an alternative account number, which was an Access Bank account. And Mr. FATINOYE obliged. He transferred the sum of 1,102,000 naira into that account. When they confirmed receipt of the money into the account, the same person who had provided the account number for the transaction felt it was time to get rid of Mr. and Mrs. FATINOYE because they had known his identity. Now, I guess at first he provided a Kuda bank account without any link with him. In his calculation, they were going to get away with that. But when that Kuda bank account failed to complete the transaction, he had no option but to provide his personal account number. And seeing that Mr. FATINOYE had known whom he was not going to risk leaving him alive. So when he now suggested to his gang that they needed to kill Mr. and Mrs. FATINOYE, one of his gang members immediately went into the FATINOYE'S kitchen, brought out a kitchen knife, and stabbed Mr. FATINOYE to death. And the very recipient of the money, the sum of 1,102,000 naira, into his personal account, saying that his friend had stabbed Mr. FATINOYE to death, he immediately brought out a hammer which he had taken along specifically for that operation. He brought out that hammer and used it to hit Mrs. FATINOYE on the head until she died at the spot. When they were done killing Mr. and Mrs. FATINOYE and had confirmed them dead, the same person who had initiated and formed the gang for that operation and had killed Mrs. Fatinoye after his gang member killed Mr. Fatinoye. He then suggested that they needed to set the house ablaze, including Mr. and Mrs. Fatinoye's body within the house. So they did not waste any time. While they were making preparations to set the house ablaze, some unfortunate duos walked into the operation, and that was the son of Mr. Fatinoye, known as Ireoluwa Fatinoye, and the Fatinoye's adopted son. Both of them walked in to the operation, and the gang members immediately seized the duo, tied their hands to the back, threw them in the car, and proceeded to set the Fatinoye's residence ablaze. All this happened on the 1st of January 2023, early hours of that very day. When they were done setting the house ablaze, they drove off with the duo, talking about the Fatinoye's son and their adopted son. The gang members actually drove Mr. Fatinoye's son, Ireoluwa, and their adopted son, Felix. They drove the both of them to Ogun State River, Adigbe. There, they threw them with their hands tied to their back. They threw them right into the river. They left them to death. Unfortunately for the Fatinoye's son, Ireoluwa, he did not make it out of that river alive. The adopted son, Felix, was lucky, however, as he was able to loosen the rope, and he was found by some fishermen and got rescued timely. Ireoluwa, however, was not found. Neither was his body found until 3 days after the unfortunate incident. His body was found on the 3rd of January 2023. When news got on the streets about how the Fatinoye's were murdered and their house set ablaze, it was almost like some horror movies on TV. It was like anything else but real. The church members were in deep shock. It was almost unbelievable for them, especially for those who saw them during the crossover night, for those who related with them and all of those. They were in total shock. How could that have happened? I mean, we were with these people during the crossover night. We exchanged pleasantries. We're all happy together. Who, in God's name, committed this dastard act against the Fatinoye? Who did they offend? Why did they have to go through these pains? Questions were flying left, right, and center. People were hurting. Families were pained. Questions were all over without answers. The security operatives stepped into the whole situation, and they kept promising they were going to get to the root of the matter, and they were going to ensure that the perpetrators of the evil act were brought to book. And indeed, the police got to work. The police had arrested the driver to the Fatinoye's, who is known as Lekon Adekombi. They took him in for questioning, and while he was in police custody, he was said to have collapsed. He fainted, and the cause of him collapsing was not really known, so the police rushed him to the hospital, which was the right thing to do. There in the hospital, he was hospitalized. What the police didn't know, however, was that Lekon had other plans. It was all a ploy to get away from the arrest. While Lekon was confined to the hospital bed receiving treatment, And while the nurses, doctors were looking away, doing other things, attending to other patients, and one would think that the police should have had at least one or two of their officers or men right by Lacon's side, watching him while he recovers from his ailment. But no, they had none over his bed. So it made it so easy and convenient for Lacon to stroll out of his hospital ward and jumped out of the hospital fence. Now that was how Lacon escaped from the police detention. The police made it so easy for their suspects, their only lead to solving this murder. He made a way easily, but not too quick to crucify the police. They were determined to redeem their image. They had to. Of course, the police got bashed. Many people bashed them left, right, and center. I mean, how incompetent could the police be? Some people were saying that. How can the police be so complicit? And all of those. Many people had opinions here and there. And the police was silent. For one thing they had determined in their mind to do was to redeem their image. And that they were going to begin by rearresting Lacon Adekombi and every other person who was involved in the cold murder of Mr. and Mrs. Fatinoye, as well as their son, Oreoluwa Fatinoye. So the police got to work. Before we proceed, have you subscribed to this channel yet? Have you? If you haven't subscribed to my channel, why don't you just quickly click the subscribe button and subscribe to this channel? Don't fail to turn on your notification bell so you'll be the first to know when next we upload a story. That said, let's go back to our full story. While people were murmuring in corners on the side, asking what exactly the police was doing to bring to book the perpetrators of that dastard act, the police was silently working on the ground. Fast forward to 10th of February 2023, the police in Ogun State broke out the good news. And this time around, the police had in their custody the murderers or alleged murderers of Mr. and Mrs. Fatinoye and their son, Oreoluwa Fatinoye. So at this point, the police had established prima facie evidence that the three suspects in their custody were, for a fact, the murderers of the Fatinoye's. Now, that is because they had made confessional statements talking about the three suspects in the police custody. The three of them had made confessional statements on their roles and involvement in the murder of the Fatinoye's on the 1st of January 2023. And also further in their confession was a revelation of the mastermind of the whole operation. Now, the mastermind of the whole operation, the murder of the Fatinoye's and the arson on their property, the mastermind turned out to be no other than someone they had trusted over the years, someone they had trusted with their lives, someone they had trusted with their properties, with their dog, and with everything that they hold dear. Like I stated earlier in my intro, they had an enemy within their workforce. Now, that person turned out to be their driver who had worked with them since 2008. This driver is known as Mr. Lacon Adekombi. Now, the police had arrested Lacon on the first instance, you remember? And he escaped from detention while he was receiving treatment in the hospital. That act alone must have made the police to know they were on track, that they had made the right call arresting him. So that helped, that made the police to dig in deeper I mean, if this person is jumping arrest the way he did, then there must be more that he's trying to cover. What exactly is he trying to hide? The police decided to get to the root of it. And it is a good thing the police did redeem their image. So Laycon confessed in his confessional statement that he indeed masterminded the killing of the FATINOYE'S. The motive turned out to be that Laycon claimed that he had requested for a salary increase from his employers several times, but they never obliged him at any of those times when he made those requests. So he took it so personal, and he decided he was going to wipe off the family. He also did claim that at some point when they refused to increase his salary, he demanded a loan to buy a motorcycle which he could use to augment his income from working with them. But he claimed again that they failed to oblige him any of his requests. Now that, according to him, left him very bitter and determined to take his pound of flesh from not just his employers, but also from their son. Quite unfortunate. How dark can the heart of man be? So it turned out that Laycon had deployed two of his friends said to be cultists to join him in that operation. And those two are known as Wahid Adeniyi, and also the other person known as Ahmed Otedola, aka Akamu. All of them are said to be cultists, members of Aye confraternity. Now, the three of them worked hand in hand. They went for the operations together at the FATINOYE'S residence in Ibara, Abeokuta, Ogun State on that fateful day, and they all carried out the evil plot to a logical or an illogical, if you may, conclusion. It is sad. As it stands right now, the three suspects will be charged to court for the murder of the FATINOYE'S. And it is indeed a very, very refreshing news, knowing that justice is on the way to being served. And I understand that the murder of Laycon Adekombi as well as his girlfriend were arrested alongside the three murder suspects. They were arrested as accomplices. Now, I do not really understand why they were arrested as accomplices, and I'm wondering, did they really know that Laycon actually killed his employers and covered up for him? Did Laycon confide in his mother and girlfriend that he was going to kill his employers and they covered for him? Or did they by any chance find out after the act that Laycon indeed had a hand in the murder of his employers but covered up for him and kept mute? What role exactly did they play to warrant them being arrested as accomplices? In as much as we love people being brought to book for their crimes, for their offenses, we are also careful to not to drag innocent people into the offenses or crimes of their loved ones simply because they are related by blood or in any way for that matter. So this question many other people have asked, and we thought to re-emphasize them, to re-echo them right here while telling the story, and let the police act accordingly and appropriately. Now, if you enjoyed watching this story, please give us a thumbs up and leave your thoughts in the comment section. Do well to share this video. In the meantime, take care of yourself, take care of your emotions, take care of your mental health. Be kind to yourself, be kind to the people around you, and always stay safe. It's a cold world out there. Look out for yourself always. I remain Darkest Ige Oluokun, and I love you.